There is a moment in every human connection when silence begins to speak louder than the messages, when attention slowly fades, and the once constant affection becomes absent. It's the point where everything that was built seems to dissolve. And it is there where attachment is born, not because the other person has left, but because something inside you resists letting go. You are not losing the person, you are losing the feeling of being seen, valued, and felt. And it is in that moment that the most human temptation arises to seek the other, to write, to call, to insist, to ask for an explanation, a sign, a closure. But what if I told you that true reconnection is not achieved by reaching outward, but by turning inward? What if, instead of chasing the other, you cultivated an energy so authentic, so strong, that your mere vibration began to be felt in silence? Carl Jung wrote in his work, Man and His Symbols, that what you resist persists, what you accept transforms you. This moment of disconnection is not your enemy. It is a door, a possibility for transmutation, because love doesn't end, it transforms. And the first step to reconnecting with someone who has drifted away is to reconnect with yourself, not from need, but from recognition, from the memory of your own worth. Here, we are not going to talk about manipulation strategies or power games. We are going to talk about presence, about resonance, about how your energy can begin to weigh more than your physical presence. Because when someone distances themselves, it's not just the bond that breaks, it's the image that person had of you that begins to fade. And what if you could rebuild that image not with words, but with vibration? Imagine that you are a frequency, that every thought you hold, every emotion you feed, every internal sensation is emitting a signal. That signal needs no words, no contact. It only needs to be coherent, to be authentic, because the human subconscious, as Jung noted, does not respond to what we say, but to what we deeply feel as real. And that emotional authenticity is perceived even from a distance. The beginning of this path is not easy because it goes against the impulse to control, to secure, to seek answers. But this is where the power of conscious intention comes in. When you stop looking outward to be seen and start looking inward to see yourself, something changes. It's as if the energy begins to condense, to become dense, magnetic, unforgettable. And it is there, in that internal space, where you become strong, where you stop waiting for the other person, and curiously, they begin to feel you, not because you're doing something to be felt, but because you are being. And that being leaves a mark, because while attachment screams desperation, authenticity whispers mystery. And in the inner world, what whispers with truth has more impact than what screams with anxiety. This is how the journey begins, not with a phone call, but with an inner decision, not by seeking answers, but by becoming the answer. Because when you change your vibration, everything else begins to realign on its own. And it is then when the other person, without knowing why, starts to remember you from the soul. When we talk about empathetic projection, we are not referring to a mere wish that the other thinks of us. We are talking about a deep practice of silent emotional connection. It is about planting an emotional memory in the other's subconscious, not through direct contact, but through a vibration felt with clarity, authenticity, and presence. Jung, in The Psychology of the Transference, mentions that projection is one of the most common and dangerous processes of the unconscious. But when done consciously, with emotional responsibility, it ceases to be a trap and becomes a tool for subtle connection. Empathetic projection does not manipulate, it does not force. It simply plants a seed. And it does so from calm, from pure intention, from an internal place that does not need validation from an immediate response. Imagine sitting in silence, no music, no phone, no social media, just you breathing deeply. In that space, you visualize that person, not with anxiety, not from need, but with gratitude. You look at them with tenderness and begin to see yourself through their eyes. How does your presence feel to him or her? What emotional imprint have you left? What feeling do you want them to remember when they think of you? This is not a forced visualization technique. It's a subtle emotional offering. It's like planting a seed without digging the soil, because what you're projecting isn't an image, it's an emotion. And the subconscious, as Jung explains in Symbols of Transformation, responds to emotionally charged images, not to empty ideas. This isn't about thinking, I want them to miss me, but about feeling, from your body, an emotion so honest, so warm, that it leaves an energetic imprint in the shared emotional field. Real connections are not erased by distance, they are only clouded by noise. Empathic projection clears that channel silently. It's like lighting a beacon in the middle of the fog. You don't know when it will be seen, but you know it's there. When you see yourself through their eyes, when you remember from their memory, you activate what Jung called the archetype of the inner other. Because whether you believe it or not, you also live in that person's unconscious. What you do with your energy modifies that symbolic presence. That's why you don't need to speak to make sense. The key is calm, no urgency, no expectation, only intention and trust. You project your presence like lighting a candle in a dark room. You may not see the light reflected immediately, but the candle is there, burning, emitting. And that energetic emission, if it is consistent and genuine, begins to resonate. You can accompany this practice with conscious breathing. Inhale from gratitude, exhale from love. Not from desire, but from recognition, because you don't project from what you lack. You project from what you are. And if you are presence, tenderness, stability, that is what the other person will start to feel without knowing why. Jung also points out in Psychological Types that the collective unconscious shares symbols, images, impressions. What you emit, especially if it's emotionally charged, enters that symbolic field, and yes, it can be perceived, not by the rational mind, but by the emotional body, the one that reacts to a song, to a perfume, to a dream about someone who is no longer present, that body which stores memories far deeper than logic. Moreover, this practice strengthens your own field. It reaffirms you, it reminds you, because by sending out that vibration consciously, you are also speaking to yourself. You are telling your system, I am present, I am connected, my energy matters. It is not just a signal outward, it is an anchoring inward. Empathic projection is not an act of control, it is a form of conscious love. It's allowing your energy to travel without forcing anything, but with clarity about who you are. It's an emotional letter, without an envelope or address, but with a destination. And most importantly, it's an exercise with yourself, because each time you do this, you also see yourself, you also connect with that part of you that loves, that feels, that vibrates. It's not just so the other person can feel you, it's so that you can remember the power you have when you stop chasing and start emanating. Thus, in the silence, in the stillness, your presence begins to make itself known, not through words, but through sensations. And those sensations leave a mark. Conscious detachment is one of the most powerful acts there is, but also one of the most misunderstood. Many believe detachment means not caring, cutting ties, becoming cold. But it's not that. Conscious detachment doesn't mean closing your heart. It means opening it without fear of the void. It's being able to stay with yourself, even when everything inside you wants to run toward the other. Carl Jung said in Memories, Dreams, Reflections that loneliness does not come from having no one around, but from not being able to share what seems important to oneself. Conscious detachment allows exactly that. To communicate with yourself, to listen to what matters without external noise. It is not indifference, it is a higher form of presence. When someone pulls away, the automatic impulse is to fill that space, to seek answers, to insist, to secure. But conscious detachment does the opposite. Instead of running toward the other, you stop with yourself. You sit in that uncomfortable silence, and then something magical happens. That silence begins to have a voice, and that voice speaks to you, about you. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about not acting from a place of lack. True detachment is energetic. It's knowing how to step back without anger, without revenge, without bottled up pain. It's taking a step back, not because you've lost, but because you understand that your presence also holds value, that your silence is not empty, but a container of strength. When you withdraw with dignity without anxiety, something shifts. The other person stops seeing you as a constant and begins to feel your absence. Because humans don't value what's predictable, they value what carries weight. An emotional silence, when it doesn't come from indifference but from self-love, is heavy. Jung writes in The Relations Between the Ego and the Unconscious that what is repressed doesn't disappear. It manifests in more intense and unexpected ways. When you consciously choose not to reach out to the other person, you're not repressing, you're transmuting the energy of that connection, you're changing the channel. You stop speaking with words and start speaking with your vibration. Conscious detachment also activates mystery. And mystery is fertile ground for emotional memory. When you become predictable, the other sees you as a constant with no nuance. But when you withdraw with presence without resentment, what remains is not a wound, it's an echo. And that echo doesn't resonate in the mind, it resonates in emotion. The mind tries to resolve, but the soul remembers. It doesn't remember the facts, it remembers the sensations. And if your absence is filled with authenticity, with love free of demands, with truth unclouded by noise, it will be felt. Because there is nothing more powerful than a presence that is not physically there but vibrates intensely. And this practice requires patience, it requires courage. Because there will be moments when you'll want to give in, to write, to explain. But that's when you need to take a deep breath and ask yourself, am I seeking momentary relief or am I holding space for deep transformation? It's not about not feeling, it's about feeling without reacting from urgency. You can support yourself with simple rituals. Write down what you feel and then burn it. Take deep breaths each time you feel the urge to reach out. Move your body to release the emotion. But most of all, you need to remember this. Your value does not decrease because someone walks away. Your presence is not erased just because there is no contact. In fact, the more authentic your detachment, the more powerful your imprint becomes. Because detachment is not forgetfulness, it is respect. It's a way of telling the other, I trust my energy so much I don't need to force anything. And that trust is felt. Because there is nothing more magnetic than someone who doesn't beg, doesn't plead, doesn't pressure, but simply vibrates in their truth. Jung also mentioned in The Ego and the Unconscious that healing can only occur when the lost symbol is rediscovered. In detachment, you become the symbol. That unresolved mystery, that emotional enigma that, instead of vanishing, becomes a presence that pulses in the silence. And although there's a natural fear of losing someone when taking distance, true power lies in trusting that what was built within you is never lost. That the invisible holds more strength than any word. That what is authentic doesn't need to be forced. That if that person is aligned with you, they'll return. Not because you called them, but because they felt you. To detach consciously is to give yourself power. It is to remind yourself that you don't need to chase anything. Because what is real, what vibrates with you, what belongs to you by frequency, returns or never truly leaves. And if it doesn't come back, it's because you yourself will have grown so much that you won't need it to. This is how silence becomes a message, absence a vibration, and your energy an echo that is never forgotten. Emotional emission is one of the most transformative practices when done from authenticity. It's not about wishing for the other person to return, it's about feeling, vibrating, emitting a frequency so genuine that the external reality begins to align with your internal state. Because the universe doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to what you are, and you are what you feel consistently. Carl Jung, in The Practice of Psychotherapy, wrote, "We are not what we want to be, we are what we feel deeply." This principle is key. Your subconscious doesn't respond to empty affirmations. It responds to real vibration, to embodied emotion, That's why emotional emission doesn't work if it comes from lack, desperation, or illusion. It works when it comes from gratitude. Every night before sleeping, sit in silence, place a hand on your chest, breathe deeply, and begin to imagine, not that the other person comes back, but that the connection is already restored. Feel the warmth in your chest, the calm in your body, the peace in your soul. Imagine yourself loved, understood, embraced. But most importantly, feel it as if it's already happening. This isn't self-deception, it's emotional training. Because the subconscious doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is deeply felt. If you can sustain an emotion for long enough, your energy field changes, and when your field changes, your vibration becomes a new magnet. It's not about imagining conversations, scenarios, or detailed reconciliations. It's about feeling the emotional quality you want to experience: love, respect, calm, unity. And by feeling it, you emit. And by emitting, you transform. Not the other person, but yourself. It's important that this practice is grounded in gratitude, not as a mental obligation, but as a real state. Thank you for this love that already vibrates in me. Thank you for this encounter that is already happening on a subtle level. Thank you because I feel complete, whole, loved. There is no pleading, no anxiety, only emotional certainty. Jung observed in the ego and the unconscious that emotion is the starting point of all psychic change. Emotional emission does not aim to manipulate, but to generate that change from within. When you consistently change your internal state, reality has no choice but to reflect it in some way. Maybe not how you expect, but always in coherence with what you vibrate. And while at first it may feel artificial, over time it becomes a refuge, because while everyone out there is seeking answers, you become the answer. While others react to the void, you fill your space with deliberate emotion, and that is felt. It's felt at a distance, because the soul recognizes vibration faster than it recognizes words. This exercise is even more powerful if you support it with small daily actions that reinforce that vibration. Listening to uplifting music, moving gently, surrounding yourself with beauty, speaking to yourself with tenderness. All of that creates emotional coherence, and coherence is the clearest language of the universe. And yes, the other person can feel it, not because you're projecting a mental image, but because you're modulating your field, and every field interacts with the fields of others. There's no way around it. If someone has been connected to you, they will continue resonating with you on some level. And if your vibration changes, that resonance changes too. Don't expect an immediate reaction. Don't treat this as a trick. Don't measure results. This practice is for you, for your peace, for your coherence. It's a form of vibrational meditation, an art of feeling without asking, of radiating without controlling. It is love without condition, first toward yourself. Carl Jung also wrote that the unlived life is a disease from which one can die. And how many of us are alive yet anesthetized? To emit emotion is to come back to life, not from drama, but from awareness, from the ability to create your own emotional atmosphere. And if the other person at some point feels that change in you, it won't be because you sought them out. It will be because your frequency can no longer be ignored. Because you've stopped being a memory and have become a vibrant presence. Invisible, yes, but absolutely real. Emotional emission then becomes a way of returning to yourself, of restoring yourself, of being love before receiving it. And from there, everything changes, not because you push it, but because you emanate it, because the soul recognizes what is authentic. Silent affirmations are not just motivational phrases you repeat without feeling. They are energetic mantras, internal resonant pieces that shape your vibrational field. When you repeat them with awareness, from the body, from emotion, they are not meant to convince the other person, they're meant to remind you of who you are. Carl Jung, in Modern Man, in Search of a Soul, explained that we do not see the world as it is, but as we are. And how we are is largely built by the thoughts we cultivate repeatedly. Silent affirmations are seeds that, when planted with presence, transform your inner terrain. They don't alter who you are. They reveal it. These phrases are not spoken aloud. They are whispered in your mind as you breathe deeply, as you walk, as you sit in silence. They become an internal pulse that accompanies you. And most importantly, they ask for nothing. They demand nothing. They simply affirm. They feel like internal certainties, not external pleas. For example, I am present even when I am not near. My energy leaves a mark. I am remembered because I vibrate truth. I don't need to be seen to be felt. I choose to vibrate with authenticity. My absence is also a presence. I trust in the power of my field. My frequency speaks for me. I am aligned with what I deserve. Each of these phrases acts like a recalibration, because in moments of doubt, of impulse, of need, you can return to them and find your center again. Not to ignore what you feel, but to reconnect with your deepest, wisest self. They are small anchors that hold you when everything seems to shake. Repeating them is not mechanical, it's ritual. You do it when you wake up, before you sleep, in the middle of an intense emotion. And with each repetition, the phrase stops being a thought and becomes a frequency that is noticeable, that vibrates, that communicates without speaking. Jung also spoke of how the unconscious operates with symbols, images, and repetition. Silent affirmations work because the subconscious loves repetition. But not just any repetition, the kind that is loaded with emotional meaning, the kind you feel is true, the one that even without external proof already vibrates in you as certainty. And it's not about repeating to attract something, it's about repeating to become something, to remind yourself that you're not waiting for anything, you are choosing something, that you don't need to look outside because your field is already working, already emitting, already leaving a trace. These affirmations are the antidote to urgency, to emptiness, to the feeling that you need something more to be whole. Because when you repeat, "My energy leaves a mark," you're not saying someone must come back. You're recognizing that you are already leaving something behind. You're trusting in your echo. Make this an intimate habit. It's your vibrational prayer. And the most beautiful thing is, you don't need anyone to hear it because the soul hears, the universe hears, and most importantly, you hear. As they become yours, the phrases transform. Some will stop resonating and others will arise spontaneously. Listen to them. Feel which ones are born from you. Because when an affirmation is born from true emotion, its impact multiplies. Don't underestimate the power of the unspoken. Don't underestimate the power of the invisible. What you repeat silently with intention becomes a constant vibration. And that vibration builds realities. Conscious writing is not an act of emotional release, it is a ritual of focus. You don't write to beg, you write to declare. To anchor yourself in how you want to feel, to reprogram your vibration through the written word, which is one of the most direct forms of communication with your subconscious. Carl Jung said in the practice of psychotherapy that writing is a way to reveal the unconscious to consciousness. When you write with intention, you are not simply releasing thoughts, you are giving structure to your energy. You are deciding what you will feed within your vibrational field. And that has a powerful impact on how you feel, how you position yourself in the world, and how you experience yourself. The technique is simple but profound. Every day, or whenever you need it, write down how you want to feel. Not what you want to obtain, not who you want to return, but how you want your internal state to be. For example, I want to feel at peace, confident in myself, at ease with what was and what is. I allow myself to live from fullness, not from waiting. Today I choose to vibrate in certainty, in dignity, in love for myself. I reconnect with the feeling of being enough. I remember my worth without needing external confirmation. I choose to dwell in calm, even when the outside does not respond. My energy is clear, and because of that, my life aligns. These phrases become affirmations, yes, but with deeper meaning, because they've passed through your body, your pulse, your pen. Thinking is not the same as writing. Writing crystallizes, anchors, declares. Furthermore, this practice creates a space of intimacy with yourself, a refuge, a written truth that brings you back to the present, because many times we're so focused on what happened or what could happen that we forget what is happening within us. Writing brings it back. Jung also affirmed that there is no transformation from darkness to light without emotion, and conscious writing allows you to observe your emotions without getting trapped in them. You see them, name them, transform them, because when you declare how you want to feel, you are taking an active role. You are no longer a victim of your emotions. You are a creator of your emotional state. You can have a notebook dedicated solely to this, your vibrational journal. It's not just any diary, it's a space of creation. Each page written with this intention becomes an extension of your field. It's your way of dialoguing with the universe, with your energy, with your essence. And most importantly, you don't do it for anyone else to read. You do it to remind yourself. Because when what you feel becomes clear on paper, it also becomes clear in your vibration. And that is noticeable, that is felt at a distance in the way you move, speak, exist in the world. This practice also helps during moments when anxiety rises. Instead of writing to that person, write to yourself. Declare what you need, what you deserve, what you choose, because if you can hold your center on paper, it will be easier to hold it in life. Writing is an act of power, not of imposition, but of declaration. And when you become conscious of what you write, you become conscious of what you vibrate. And when you vibrate with intention, the world begins to respond with coherence. The body does not lie. While the rational mind overthinks and creates stories, the body vibrates, feels, and stores memory. That's why moving it with intention is one of the most direct ways to unblock stagnant emotions and raise your frequency. Body movement is not just physical, it's energetic, vibrational. Carl Jung, in The Ego and the Unconscious, proposed that all psychic energy, if not expressed, becomes a symptom. And many times, those symptoms manifest in the body. Tension, anxiety, fatigue, tightness. That's why movement is not about aesthetics. It's emotional medicine. It's a way to channel what can't find release through words. You don't need a complex routine, only attention, intention, breath. You can start your day by slowly stretching your body, feeling each muscle, breathing deeply. You can dance alone in your room, letting your body express itself without choreography, without judgment. You can practice deep breathing with gentle movements that follow the natural rhythm of your emotion. Every time you move your body with awareness, you're telling your system, I am present, I am releasing, I am choosing to feel differently. And that energetic signal is more powerful than 1,000 positive thoughts, because the body has its own language, one that resonates far beyond words. Body movement also breaks patterns. You always react the same way to certain emotions, for example, by shutting down, freezing, contracting. By moving, you create an opening, because if something is true, it doesn't need to be forced, it only needs to be felt. And in that non-doing, you strengthen, cleanse, and reconnect with yourself. And from there, whatever is meant to return will return, not through pressure, but through resonance. Non-doing becomes strategic. It's an art, and like all art, it's cultivated day by day.